Good morning. This is Dr. Timothy Scott Beck here at Life Point Medical. It is October the 28th of 2024. So glad you're listening to me this morning, and I want to go ahead and give us some information. First of all, this is going to be a big week. We got Halloween on Thursday. We've got the fall time change on Saturday, which always rocks my world. And then we have the presidential election next Tuesday. So with all that being said, next week's going to be a whole different world for us. And hopefully it's going to be good and everybody's going to be okay. So just a lot going on, and hope everybody stays safe and enjoys the Halloween season. Okay. One thing about the time change is that it can be very stressful for people, and I'm not sure why we still do it, but we are doing it this time, and again, it's just weird. It's very difficult for me to adjust to it, to be quite frank with you. So a couple of clinical things that I want to talk to you about. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about thyroid, just to give you some general information about it. I've done this before, but let's talk about it. Your thyroid is an organ that is located right here in the anterior part of your throat, on top of your voice box. And it has a hormone called thyroxine that it releases into your system, and it plays a role with every single cell in your body. Like, it's the gas pedal for life when it comes to how you feel and how your skin develops and how your hair grows and how your GI tract moves. It is the one hormone that kind of regulates all of that kind of stuff going together. Now, what happens is, just like a lot of other organs in our body, when we get around 50, for some people, it starts to wear out. You know, kind of like my eyes have wore out, and that's why I got glasses on. And so we screen people every year for thyroid. If you're in that age where we want to pay attention to it. We know that if you don't get treated with thyroid, it can have a huge implication on your life. It can cause early death. It can predispose you to heart disease, to diabetes. It can mess with your brain, your cognition, all that stuff. So we do screen for it. We screen for it with a TSH, a thyroid stimulating hormone, which is a brain hormone that we use to determine whether or not you're getting enough thyroid medication, because it tells us whether we're doing a good job or not. Plus, the patient tells us. We have treatments for it. We put people, when we find that somebody's low on thyroid, we replace the hormone that should be there anyway. And we have a synthetic version of it. We have natural versions of it. Some people do really good with the synthetic version. Some people do really good with the natural forms of it, where they take bovine, take cows, take a bunch of thyroid, mix them together, and then make them into pills. And that's called nature thyroid or armor thyroid. We use those quite frequently, but we also use the synthetic thyroid. And the key to taking care of the thyroid as a clinician is to get the labs where you want them and get the patient feeling appropriate based on the medicine, their thyroid condition, and all this other stuff. So that's what we try to do. We try to match those up, and we want the labs to look good and the patient to feel better. So that's thyroid disease. We treat it here in the office. Some signs that you may be having thyroid issues is, one of them is loss of hair, constipation, weight gain or fatigue. And so those are the things usually that reflect low thyroid. And then if you've got too much thyroid, which is a whole nother condition, you may be jittery, nervous, losing weight. You may be cold tolerant. In other words, you can walk out in the cold. You don't need a coat on where everybody else has got 2 or 3 layers on. Just things like that. But if you're interested in your thyroid, or you want us to check your thyroid, first of all, if you're a normal patient of ours, we've probably already screened you for it. But if you feel like you got these symptoms and stuff like that, we can go ahead and not just do the screening test for you. We can do a full thyroid panel to see where things are. All right, last thing I want to talk to you about. This is just, if you get put in the hospital, we want to know about that. Now, the system is set up now that if you list us as your primary care physician, when you get admitted to the hospital, they'll go ahead and tell us. hey, this patient's been admitted to the hospital, and they'll also send us something when you're discharged. We want to talk to you as soon as you get out of the hospital, okay? And this is an initiative by Medicare and everything, but it actually turns out, and this is one I agree with, and I think this makes a big difference. And what it is when you get put out of the hospital, if we see you, if you bring your meds that the hospital discharged you with, we will help you reconcile all that to make sure that they did it right and didn't mess something up while you were in the hospital. Okay. And that's what we're trying to do. Number one is trying to make sure they didn't mess anything up with your meds, that when you got discharged from the hospital, that we straighten your meds back out. And there's a flaw in there that a lot of people don't understand. So briefly, when you're in the hospital, they have formulary drugs that they give you. They may not give you the same drug that you were on when you got admitted. So they may change it to the formulary, but then when you go to get discharged, they don't change it from your formulary. So you've got two types of the same medicine at home that you're taking because you didn't know what you should or shouldn't done. And they're supposed to do this really good, but you guys know as well as I do, when you're being discharged from the hospital, it's a little chaotic sometimes. It can be delayed, and you're not getting communicated with the way that you need to be. But that's what we're here for. So our number one goal is to make sure your meds are straight. Number two is to try to keep you from going back in the hospital. And that's what we try to do. Okay, sometimes we have to send you right back. That's a thing. But mostly we're trying to, A, reconcile your meds, make sure you're not in any danger from medication misappropriation. And number two is to try to keep you out of the hospital. And Medicare and all the powers that be said that keeping you out of the hospital saves money, saves lives, saves a whole bunch of stuff. So we're on board with that. The biggest thing I want you to do is if you get put in the hospital, I want you to contact us as soon as you've been discharged, whether or not the hospital does or not. Call us so we can go ahead and get you set up with a transition of care appointment, which transition of care means you're coming from the hospital back to us, and let us look at your stuff and do what we're supposed to do to make sure you're safe. All righty. Thank you so much for listening to me today. Hopefully I've given you some good information. We're here for you, 706-782-0016. Remember, we want to see you and we want to hear from you if you're having any problems. Otherwise, have a great day and call me if you need me.